I do thank you for giving me a couple of minutes of your time. We're here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, brought to you by Ducts, the indoor air professionals, formerly known as Duct Busters. Ducts cleans the mold and mildew and the junk from your long neglected duct work. Everything in that mysterious area between your vent and your HVAC system. Called Ducts at 876-9907, 876-9907. If you have some mold and mildew there may be mold and mildew elsewhere that if you breathe deeply, you'll start wheezing. One thing that we are not going to wheeze at, though, is the wealth within the government sector. The government sector of the American cartelized economy is great. How great is it? How great is the wealth of governments that are not national in scope, but merely local? What about school boards? What about utility districts? What about towns and counties and states? What about retirement systems? How great is the wealth amassed in them? CalPERS, for example, the California retirement system, is one of the biggest market players in the world, with many billions of dollars ostensibly in payments and dues from California teachers built up, and a little gravy train there on the side, a little side door of that giant vessel, paying out retirees in California. Well, Tennessee has a system like that. It's called the TCRS, the Tennessee Comprehensive Retirement System, with its what I would think is window dressing of the payment scheme for teachers and other state and governmental and government connected employees. And there's a great wealth of assets in that system here in Tennessee, to the tune of gross assets, or should I say, all assets altogether worth $47.5 billion, greater in scale and scope than the state itself. I have on the phone Walter Burien, who is an activist in this question. He has a very interesting story that you can read about at Nooganomics.com, the website of which I'm the mild-mannered editor. He lives in St. John's, Arizona, and he is He's been involved for some years in developing the argument and the evidence for collective government, and specifically collective government as capitalists. Walter, how do you find out about collective government as capitalist? What is the data? What is the name of the database that you use in this study of modern American government?
Well, there's several databases, but the bottom line there is in 1946, a group called GFOA, Government Financial Officers Association, started pitching the annual financial report accounting structure. Just like IBM, AT&T, Microsoft, Apple, they do an annual financial report each year in any corporation. And with government, they threw on one word onto the annual financial report to call it a comprehensive annual financial report, or the acronym CAFR for short. Whereas for public corporations, it's AFR, annual financial report, government's comprehensive annual financial report. So in 1946, GFOA started promoting. By the 50s, most of the large entities were doing a comprehensive annual financial report. GFOA was centered out of Chicago, by the way. And, so the state of Illinois, city of Chicago, big cities, city of New York, Los Angeles, and California, and state of New York, and, Florida, New Jersey, Delaware. Over the years, started producing a comprehensive annual financial report. By 1977-78, any local governments that were not producing a comprehensive annual financial report were, basically quasi-required to do so, to basically centralize one standard accounting for all of government in the United States. Now, the big difference between a comprehensive annual financial report and what the public hears every year, from your city, your county, your school district, our budget report, we're short of funds on our budget report. Well, picture a budget report and equate it to your budget for your house. Pay the electric bill, pay the mortgage, pay the lawn cutter, the upkeep, maintenance of the house, insurance for the house. That's your budget for your house. And picture the comprehensive annual financial report as your statement of net worth. Now, there's a big difference between your annual budget for your house and your statement of net worth. Yeah, you could have been for 25, 30 years working on 3 businesses, investing. Your statement of net worth may show you as, $3.5 million. Now, your budget report for your house may be $50,000 or $60,000. Big difference. So, what was constantly promoted to the population over the last 80 years was budget reports, and never a mention of the annual financial report, or in government terms, CAFR. Now, the big reality that is very important to grasp here, you could have a city, county, state, or school district promoting a shortfall of budgetary revenue, which is what they allocate to their budget. You could have a state saying, we're $800 million short on our budget. We're going to have to lay off teachers, fire policemen, raise taxes. And if you look at the corresponding annual financial report, they could be 15, 20, 25 billion in the black. Okay? It's selective presentation. And we're not talking something that developed over a year or 5 years or 10 years. This is developed over 80 years. So you've constantly had local governments promoting shortfalls in their budget as they're building up their wealth, shown under the CAFR. And a budget report is a selectively created document of, they primarily focus on tax revenue collected, where tax income is going to be expended. And under the annual financial report, they show where the tax income is coming in and being allocated, but they also show the income from the investment accounts, the enterprise operations, the whole 9 yards. And what has built up over 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, in some cases 200 years in a local government. So you have the biggest misrepresentation taking place to the population by promoting selectively created budget reports and never a word of the comprehensive annual financial report. And if a public corporation did the exact same thing, promoted a budget, never mentioned their annual financial report, which shows the true wealth has been building up over decades, and they paid dividends based on the budget report, not the annual financial report.
Right.
Excuse me. Number one, all the directors would get indicted by the SEC and be convicted for selective presentation or fraud. Because when you own stock in a public corporation, it's required by SEC law that you get a copy of their annual financial report each year, which shows a breakdown of what's built up within the corporation, from scratch one, what the expenditures are, what the ownership of different operations are, what the money transfers are, to give a net view of the corporate status and size, scope, and how much money they're making. Government has just been promoting their budget reports. Now, the public should have been going through the comprehensive annual financial reports with a fine-tooth comb for the last 50, 60 years. And a lot of things would be different in this country if they had. But being that government never mentioned, never peeped, not a word about their comprehensive annual financial report, and they had the full cooperation of the syndicated media-controlled education in both political parties, for not a peep, not a mention, not a word. The report was sent to all the primary, editors of the papers for the last 40 years. It was sent to the directors and CEOs of ABC, CBS, NBC, of the primary states in their region for the last 35, 40 years. The school districts, universities, colleges, they all produce their own annual financial report and get copies of the rest. Your congressmen, senators get copies each year. The only one that was excluded was the entire population of the United States due to the money and power involved. Now, as they build up the investment capital, whether it be through the pensions, whether it be through self-insurance accounts, whether it be through special liability accounts, whether it be through bond repayment accounts, debt repayment accounts. Many liability accounts they show, which are actually holding zones for assets. All of those different funds, the money has to be invested and held somewhere. And think of the power base from collective, thousands of local governments holding tens of millions, tens of billions, or in some cases $1 trillion or $2 trillion, being now allocated globally across the world for investment. That's the biggest power base on the face of the planet. And any congressman or senator or news anchor or anyone else, if they even mentioned the CAFR, would find themselves kicked out in the street real quick, because the whole game revolved around non-disclosure. Never mentioned, never a word, never a peep. No one looked. Everybody stays off in La La Land, and we continue business as usual in the biggest financial takeover structure the earth has ever seen.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Walter Burien. Walter Burien runs CAFR1.com, CAFR1.com, and he's a writer, a former commodities trader, and he's explaining to us how it is that government actually tells us more or less its capital assets, its capital structure. Though I do want to ask you, Walter Burien, do CAFRs say it all? It seems to me that what we really want to be getting is gross receipts. We want to have a gross receipts figure in addition to the capital assets figure. And it seems to me the CAFRs I've read for the past 2 years don't give somehow a grand total. Somehow, and you're saying you offer an explanation of why we can't get that.
Government was not supposed to operate at a profit. So if they are operating at a profit, their intent is to try to mask it in any way, shape, or form. Enron, everyone's heard of Enron. Enron promoted their profits and hid their debt. And then they blew up, because they had so much debt. Government promotes their debt and hides their profit. So when you look at an annual financial report for a public corporation like Apple, IBM, Xerox, or whatever, they're trying to give a presentation to show how strong they're getting, how much money they're making, and so forth. Government, on the other hand, that's kind of a big no-no for government to do the same. They'll create their structure. Being that they're not supposed to operate at a profit, what they'll do is they'll create a liability account. Let's say you and I are in business, David.
Yes.
And we have $1 billion, okay, in cash on the table in front of us that we created over 25 years. Well, technically with $1 billion sitting on the table, we have $1 billion net worth. But we say, we don't want people seeing that billion. Let's see how we can move it around. Okay, so we say, okay, we're going to retire in 5 years. Excuse me. Have a little bit of a cold. We're going to retire in 5 years. And we're going to build a retirement account. Buy an island in Polynesia. Excuse me. On this island, we're going to build a mansion. How much money do we need? And the actuary, we go to an actuary, and he goes, well, an island, how big? Oh, about 425 acres. How big the mansion? Oh, about 33,000 square feet. He's figuring it all out, equipment, time, moving, getting the building built, the island bought. He goes, you're going to need $700 million. Okay? So we have our $1 billion cash on the table. We now create a fund, a liability account to buy an island, build a mansion, put $700 million into it. Now we have a liability account of $700 million.
Well, doesn't that show up as an expenditure?
We have $300 million left on the table, so that means our net worth is now only $300 million.
But wouldn't that island show up as an asset, Walter Burien? Wouldn't that island show up as an asset on your account?
After it was bought, after it was developed, and after we retired and lived on it. But by projecting ahead an expense that we're going to have to pay, 5-10 years from now, it's not an asset, it's a liability account. So government will create liability accounts for whatever they can think of. Advanced forward insurance payments. When government talks about debt, bond issues. Many estates will have bond repayment accounts where they put 40% of their debt on deposit, to pay off, their existing debt. The reason they do that is, say, for example, the original bond issue was at 2.25% interest, and the 40% account to pay off their debt is getting 16% interest. They're making a lot of money by putting off money to the side to pay debt, which they could actually pay off most of it, right at this time. Self-insurance accounts. They got the bright idea. Well, we're paying out $400,000 a year approximately on liability payments on our insurance payments. Let's put together a fund. We'll say our liability payments might be $1 million a year. So that means we have to put aside at 5% interest, 50 million, 30 million, whatever, to be self-insured, and they'll create a fund, $35 million, which the return from that fund is designated to pay off their insurance liability. And that insurance fund now is for, self-insurance is a liability account. If a school district says they're going to build 3 new elementary schools, they'll be putting money off into a liability account to build those 3 schools. Now, whether they build them or not, that's a different story. But by creating the liability account, it gives them a parking zone for the money that they're bringing in, and it's stripped off the budget. That's a very important point. Every liability account, when they pull money off the general purpose operating funds, it's reducing the amount that they have for the budgets.
Now, let me ask you your estimate of your estimate, Walter Burien of CAFR1.com, of the total collective government asset base. How big is it, and upon what do you base the calculation?
Well, a good starting point there on my front page, CAFR1.com, about 3 links down, it says a listing of local government CAFRs. You want to click on that listing. I put up an example listing of about 4,500 CAFRs categorized by city, county, state, school district, special district, enterprise operation, pension fund, the whole 9 yards. They've even started a new group, which I wasn't even aware of until last year, called Council of Governments. I mean, they network together as local governments to increase their power base. But that's 4,500 out of about 184 annual financial, 186 annual financial reports produced each year.
Wait,
by
how many?
local
What's that
governments.
number again? 100. How many thousands of CFRs are written every year? Again?
AFRs. Yeah, about 184, 186,000
AFRs.
reports.
Okay. Well, how many CAFRs?
All local governments.
How many CAFRs are written every year, Walter Burien?
Yeah, and they're each separate, each individual, each have their own individual investments, assets, and so forth. So the collective is massive. When you start looking down through these 4,500 I have listed there, and it's listed categorically by state for each group. And, when you start looking at a few...
And those are just samples.
Say, oh, my God, how much money they're dealing with, especially when you look at the enterprise operations. And one thing I learned about 10 years ago that kind of got me a little bit mad. Keep in mind, I was a commodity trading advisor for about 15 years and, was in the financial arena for, about 35 years. The local governments, were, especially back in the 90s, they had money coming in, massively from investment income, tax income, whole 9 yards, enterprise income. They needed a parking zone for that money. So, what they had started doing in the 70s was when they had profit being made and they needed a parking zone, they would promote debt. We need a new bond issue, a $20 billion bond issue to buy this property, do this project. Even though they had the money, they would promote the bond issue. And now, through the back door, they would use their own investment assets to fund their own bond issue. In doing so, they now kept the base figure of the equity alive and well, which is a power base. Okay, they locked the public into paying back the bond issues, through tax income. So effectively there, the money was the public's in the first place, and the public is paying back on bonds with their own, with funds that the government had invested.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Walter Burien, who is a longtime expert in CAFRs, which is to say comprehensive financial annual reports. And we're learning about government as capitalist. It is a vast system. The total asset base is large. This is David Tulis. I've got some things I want you to hear. Hang on.
Due to the money involved.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Walter Burien, who is a kind of a CAFR expert, and I've learned a lot from him about the existence of these very beautifully produced documents. County, city, and state produce beautifully illustrated reports on very fine paper, and they're available for anyone. They're available for download. Daisy Madison, the city of Chattanooga finance director, does a wonderful job. She gets a commendation every year in the CAFR for Chattanooga from the auditor that says that this production is following basic American accounting standards, and yet no media outlet that for some reason mentions the details in this report. It's called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and if you want to find out more, just Google CAFR Chattanooga, and you might find an essay or two of mine. And you might also find the actual report available for download. It's 4 or 5 megabytes in which you can read all about city government. And it's just an interesting story that I've covered for some time since I began Nooganomics.com. That's my website, Nooganomics.com. I'm the mild-mannered editor with the bow tie, and also your host here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, where we think that near is better than far, that small is better than big, that simple beats complex. And down in the footnotes where the fleas struggle for supremacy, we have this, that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. We're brought to you by Sky Aerial Services, 521-0284. That's 521-0284. Speaking of drones, there's a major report out today, or major report yesterday on The Intercept about the drone papers. These are very extremely, I would say, well, that's a little bit redundant, extremely valuable and interesting reports about the drone warfare run by the president with innumerable details from secret sources. This is important material, and I urge you, my listener, to have a stake in the free press, have a stake in liberty in the free press, including my station. That is to say, support my radio station by patronizing the advertisers. You can be, if you are interested, you can be have connection with me by other means as well. Very profitable, I would trust. And Walter Burien is telling us about the CAFR system, the world of the CAFR, CAFR. There are 184,000 CAFRs published every year by government entities around the country, utility districts, school districts, counties, cities, and states as well. There are equivalent reports produced from among 18,000 federal government operations. And Walter, what would you estimate would be the total asset base of government, collective government around the country? How many, is it in the trillions?
Between local and federal collectively, you're talking up around $145 trillion. And, they're not going to consolidate their figures anywhere. You have to sit there and do your own forensics because you're defeating their non-disclosure. I mean, the whole game is based on non-disclosure. Never talk about it, never mention it, never go there. Government constantly promotes debt. I mean, what's the best way, on an individual basis, if you don't want anyone hitting you up for money, looking into your financial affairs, just tell them you're broke. Oh my God, I'm $5 million in debt. No one's going to come and try to borrow money off you. No one's going to look at your financials. But with someone like Bill Gates or something, or Warren Buffett, known to have, billions and billions of dollars, people constantly are trying to pull up their, statements of net worth and holding reports and everything else, looking to see what they're doing. Okay, government, they play the very good psychological routine of constantly promoting, oh, we're in debt, we have to take more money from you. You stay clear of them like the plague, with that type of psychology.
All right, you say that
but
go ahead.
Now, this is very important. Here's a very, very important point that all of your listeners need to grasp. This has been going on for 80 years. Government didn't take over everything, in 1 year. Little bit by little bit by little bit, each year as they expanded and expanded, they turned into the biggest takeover machine and monopoly on the face of the planet. Systematically, as they expanded their pension funds, their investment accounts, self-insurance accounts, and many other different financial accounts, they were buying up maybe 3, 4, 5% of their, of the equity they had. They would use to invest in stocks, real estate projects, commercial projects, shopping malls, everything else. So over the years, say if they're investing 5%, my favorite expression is there's only so many nickels in a dollar. Government systematically kept growing and taking over little bit by little bit each and every year till they became the largest financial megalith on the face of the planet. Competing, they had enough equity built up in their investment capital to either collapse or, cause any country to thrive around the globe.
Well, let's just back up, Walter Burien. Let's just back up for a second.
From
hold on.
Local and federal is up around $42 trillion.
All right, let me ask you about this regarding just the scale of these numbers. We're talking. You're saying that the government assets in the United States pass $140 trillion. Now, just to give an idea of numbers, the IT sector has cash balances. The very wealthy sector has a cash balance of $546 billion at the end of the second quarter. By one count, the market cap of shares in the U.S. exchanges is $18,668 billion as of 2012. So the figure you're giving is larger than one count of shares on the exchanges. And is that because the assets are not necessarily just shares? There are other assets as well?
It's a full spectrum of investment assets. You're not just talking the U.S. exchanges, you're talking every exchange around the world that they're invested in. Real estate projects, shopping malls, apartment complexes.
In Rhodesia,
office buildings,
in Bulgaria.
The whole 9 yards. And cash loans to other countries, to other companies. What I recommend people do, on my articles page, I have an example of one, a large CAFR, which was a pension fund CAFR, CalSTRS, California Teachers Retirement Fund CAFR. When you click on the link to show the investments held, it'll show international or domestic. If you click on international, it'll list about 70 different countries. Okay, and you can look at what their holdings are in Israel, Russia, China, Mexico, Argentina, Vietnam, and it'll say equities, real estate, cash loans. They have different categories, and you can click on each and look at what real estate projects they own. The New York State Retirement CAFR is a good one to look at. You'll see all of the business centers and apartment complexes and shopping malls that they own. It gives a full diversity of the investment capital.
Well, the listeners should know that here in Tennessee we have the largest, probably the largest corporation in the state. Probably is not Walmart, which has many colonies. You might say retail colonies.
The Tennessee Valley Authority. That's a government enterprise operation.
Now, I've not looked at that one, but the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, Walter, has $47.5 billion in assets. And that's just one fund, out of hundreds in Tennessee. A large city like Memphis may have 15, 20 different investment funds for different purposes, or liability accounts. The state, now the state of Texas listed all of their investment funds on their cash report. They had about 8,500 separate different investment funds, both large and small. I mean, there's an example of a small one
they had an individual fund for each year for the Texas commemorative plate. They issue a Texas commemorative plate each year. And they'd have like the 1959 Texas commemorative plate fund, 185,000, 1961 Texas commemorative plate fund, 360,000. I guess they wanted to have a little fun there in case somebody wanted to order one of the back issues of the plates. But examples of large ones under road authorities, they had probably about 65 separate funds. Road Development Trust Authority Fund, Road Development Beautification Fund, County Road Development Fund, each with its own separate balance, each for a specific purpose. Florida, lists their funds also. Tennessee, I've never looked to see if they've consolidated their different investment funds on the state level anywhere. Now, keep in mind when I mentioned, Texas had over 8,000 different funds. That was strictly on the state level. If you looked on the local government level of the cities, counties, school districts in the state, it would be several 100,000 different specialty funds or investment funds. When you talk about pension funds, the Tennessee has, a system retirement fund, which local governments can participate in. But that doesn't mean that the local governments in Tennessee can't run their own pension fund. So you may have certain cities, that do not participate with the Tennessee system fund that are running their own pension funds. You may have judges in the state that all got together and created their own retirement fund, which will be separate from the Tennessee system fund.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Walter Burien.
Jailers, for the county jails or state prisons have their own separate funds.
Well, Walter, let me ask you a question about the beginning of this this long effort. You're the person to talk to, I guess, on this question of CAFR around the country. You have several videos on YouTube about it. I've linked to at least one of them today. In fact, at Nooganomics.com from 2010, one of your freedom lectures. What happened when New Jersey elected Governor Jim Florio? This was when this whole sort of ordeal began. Talk about
in 1990, I was back in New Jersey, and there was a governor running for office by the name of Jim Florio, and he ran on a no new tax program. New Jersey has some of the most excessive taxes in the country, and so the public unanimously voted for Jim Florio. And as soon as he gets into office, by the way, Jim Florio was an attorney, and he worked for a Pennsylvania law firm out of Philadelphia. And the first thing he did, his very first action, was to, they had, a lot of toxic waste dumps in New Jersey. And there was a $3 billion toxic waste cleanup fund. $2 billion of that approximately went to the Glassboro dump. Okay, now the Glassboro dump just happened to be one of the largest clients of this law firm out of Philadelphia. Go figures. But from the prior administration, they had proposed a $2.8 billion tax increase. Florio gets elected, and he's now going to let this $2.8 billion tax increase go through. Being the new governor, he could have stopped it. He didn't. So, of course, the public got furious about that. There were two DJs, John and Ken, on 101.5 FM out of New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey, which covered all of New Jersey, parts of Pennsylvania and New York. Well, John and Ken took the bull by the horns and started rabble-rousing. We can't allow this to happen in our state. We got to organize and get this $2.8 billion tax increase repealed. Well, with them rabble-rousing around the clock, and they challenged the listeners to start an organization to get the $2.8 billion tax increase repealed. 10 of us got together, incorporated a group called Hands Across New Jersey, and with the help of John and Ken rabble-rousing around the clock, we had 63,000 volunteers within about a month or so, and all 21 counties in New Jersey organized. Our first rally was, to Trenton, where we had all the cars, meet at the different trail points in New Jersey and then converge on Trenton. We had about 115,000 cars converge on Trenton, effectively causing one big traffic jam, getting through to the front of the state capitol building where we're holding our rally. But being a commodity trading advisor, I took over looking at the budget, revenue, and finance. And when I looked at the budget report, which was the only thing I was familiar with, I said, I don't see any large investment funds. I don't see, which I knew the state had. I didn't see any return from the enterprise operations listed, which New Jersey had 69 in it, large, very large enterprise operations, like the New Jersey Turnpike or on the State Parkway, Port Authority of New York, New Jersey. I said, this is selective accounting. So my father used to work for the state of New Jersey. He was director of personnel over all state employees for a couple of years. I knew how to go through the Centrex to reach whoever I wanted. And I knew the budget director was on vacation till the following Tuesday of that week. So I called his two lower assistants, talked to one first saying, hi, and the budget director was Richard Keevy. I said, hi, I'm working on a report for Richard Keevy. I have to have it done by Tuesday when he gets back from vacation. I need all the figures on the investment accounts, autonomous agency accounts, total income, so forth for the state. He said, oh, you want the comprehensive annual financial report?
Oops.
Bing. First time I heard that. I said, yeah, can you send me a copy? He goes, well, I don't know. You're going to have to talk to Mark, the next one down from Richard. Get my speed dial. Hi, Mark. Just spoke to Jim, working on a report for Richard. I have to have it done by Tuesday. I need the comprehensive annual financial report. He goes, oh, where do you want it sent to? Got it that Friday. And, I'm a bottom line type person. I wanted to see the total investments held, which was about, what the hell was it? Listed about 40 some odd billion, but it was actually about 73 billion, being that they listed based on purchase price, not on actual market value at the time. And then I started looking for the total cash income, tax income, enterprise income, investment income, federal grants, the total gross income coming in for the state. Now their budget was about, 18 billion for the year. Total cash gross receipts. Now I think it was on page 176. Was 83,799 million, if I remember correctly. And I learned the definition of syndicated organized crime right there on the spot and the principle of operation. Anything that was a cost and an expense, they left under the budget report to be paid for by taxation. Anything that was a profit center, any of the enterprise operations, any of the investment, large investment funds that generated massive amounts of revenue, was restricted by statute for no inclusion whatsoever with the budget report. And, that got me kind of mad at that point in time, but, I started not national at that time, I started local disclosure in New Jersey and through 101.5. But I called 101.5 and said, I got the holy grail of accounts in my hand, the comprehensive annual financial report from New Jersey. It's 1989's report. Let's go live on the air. And Johnny kept saying, well, come on down to the station. You got it. We will. So I drove down to the station. They looked at the report. He goes, yeah, he's got it. So for an hour, I went on live on air, covering the bottom line points and analogies of the revenue and wealth listed within the report and gross income. But the after I left the station, driving back home, being that Hands Across New Jersey was real big in New Jersey, and many volunteers, a lot of people had Hands Across New Jersey bumper stickers on their cars. Every one of them listened to 101.5. As I drove home, everyone I saw with a Hands Across New Jersey bumper sticker was just sitting there driving, and you could tell they were in this mesmerized, shock state, because they were trying to comprehend what they had just heard, on the last hour. Well, what happened was 101.5. Keep in mind, with the investment capital from these thousands of different local governments, which equate into the trillions of dollars, and has been going on building for 60 years, all the Fortune 500 companies, large corporations, were constantly bidding for the government investment capital. And they knew that the public was, not aware of this. And it made it easier for them to network and, rub elbows and, grease the skids, from the inside. Well, 101.5 got probably 20 phone calls saying, if you ever let that guy on the air again, we are going to cancel all of our sponsorship of your station. Oh, my God. It was a visceral reaction. That was the last live interview 101.5, did. John and Ken never mentioned the CAFR again, ever. Okay, they ended up out in Los Angeles, the John and Ken show, where also they will not mention the CAFR. The silence is golden rule has been strictly enforced for 80 years.
Let me ask you a question.
The whole game
Walter Burien, let me ask you a question now about
turning government into a takeover machine. Required confidentiality and non-disclosure.
Let me ask you about government assets. What happens when government loses money? When government trades bad or it has a currency swap loss? What happens?
They love to promote when they lose money. They love to promote when they lose money. You'll never see them promote. Let's see, we lost $400 million here, but we made $1.5 billion here. You'll only hear about the $400 million loss, not the $1.5 billion profit. It's just like any other company. They're constantly in there investing, moving their monies around, domestic, international. Sometimes they get hit. Sometimes they network between each other to utilize their entire investment portfolio to move the markets. And everybody else loses. I mean, when you see these quick, jot ups in the Dow, jot downs in the Dow, jots up in gold, jots, down in, other currencies, whatever. Government is the largest player through their institutional fund accounts. And a lot of the managers from the institutional fund accounts network with each other. And they have, basically agreed, well, let's move it here so fast, so quickly. And, everybody else gets burnt and they make a phenomenal amount of money. In the 2008 bubble burst, when, the entire international marketplace collapsed, for about a month and a half, short derivative positions are, something that you make a phenomenal amount of money on. Now, there was about $32 to $35 trillion in losses internationally, from that market collapse. Well, they promoted the debt and the losses, but in derivatives, for every dollar lost in one account, a dollar is credited to another account. So who took the other side of the coin of that $35 trillion loss? Primarily, it went into the institutional government investment.
Well, how much did government lose in 2008, Walter, in the meltdown in 2008, the loss of confidence in the credit sector?
Net-wise, they made money. They probably pulled off somewhere around $25 trillion collectively. They promoted their losses. They didn't make, and there's not a mention or peep regarding the profits. As I mentioned, when you're using derivatives, which government's the number one trader of derivatives through the banks primarily, they made a phenomenal amount of money on the net basis. They had specific losses and they got their tail feathers burnt in certain areas, but they made a phenomenal profit in other areas.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Walter Burien. Walter Burien is the CAFR expert out of Arizona, St. John's, Arizona. He runs a website called CAFR1.com. That's CAFR1.com. Walter, thanks very much for joining my listener me here at AM 1240.
Well, make sure your listeners take a look at that sample example CAFR directory on my site, because they'll be amazed if they can download it.
The listener needs to go to our Twitter account. We have put a link out there to Walter Burien's listing of various CAFRs around the country. We are AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and I thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. I have covered this field of comprehensive annual financial reports, the only media outlet in Chattanooga that makes any use of them. And I've got a paper coming out, a little essay coming out about the Chattanooga situation from 2014. If I can just get back to my keyboard. But I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm here at the radio station talking to you, my listener, at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.